Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto's true power awoke with Yuri Han and he formed a dark harem? Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto Uzumaki was pissed. This was supposed to be a day of accomplishment for him, a day for celebration for him. Despite being paired up against an admittedly superior taijutsu user in the form of one Kiba Inuzuka, he had won and progressed into the Chunin finals. Some may argue that his victory over the Inuzuka may have been a fluke, but at least he didn't win by something embarrassing like farting in the mutt's face. So what if he landed a lucky blow that knocked the mutt out? A victory was a victory nonetheless. However, any sense of pride or accomplishment had been sapped by his supposed sensei, when he met the masked man at the hospital, replacing it with anger, hatred and loathing instead. Sorry Naruto, the silver-haired Jonin commented. But I've got other things I need to do. Let me guess, you're going to be training Sasuke, right? The blonde cut the man off. Ma, don't complain. The masked man waved off the blonde's statement. Sasuke's opponent is far more dangerous than yours. Your opponent won't kill you, Sasuke's will. I will give you that. The Uzumaki gritted out, seeing through Kakashi's attempt to guilt-trip him. Gaara is a far more dangerous opponent than that Hyuga prick, but you are dead wrong if you think that prick won't try to kill me as well. If you had stuck around instead of coddling the Uchiha again, you would have seen him try to kill his own cousin, whom is also a leaf kunoichi. So yeah, Neji Tem has already shown he has no problem killing his own comrades. Kakashi frowned at his student's jab at his coddling of the Uchiha, but let it slide for the time being. Knowing that Naruto had no idea just how much danger the last loyal Uchiha was in, with Orochimaru after the boy for unknown reasons in his recent encounter with Kabuto in the Uchiha's room not too long ago. However, the masked Jonin did have to relent to the fact that the blonde genin was correct. His rival, Guy, had been ranting not too long ago about how unyouthful his student was for attempting to end the life of such a youthful kunoichi. Which meant that Naruto was in just as much danger as Sasuke. The only exception was that at least against Neji, the proctor would be able to stop the match should the risk of death be imminent, unlike with Gaara, whom Kakashi was sure would kill the proctor just for getting in the way. Though, that would hardly matter if the Hyuga already scored a direct Juken strike to the heart. Which left only him one option to keep his blonde student safe. Then perhaps you should simply quit, and try again next year. The Jonin lazily advised, refusing to look up from his book. Sure, it may hurt the blonde teen for a bit, but better than dying, wasn't it? However, he failed to notice that his words had only served to infuriate the blonde further. So that's it then, Naruto ground out, clenching his fists. Those of the words of advice from my sensei. Just give up. Naruto, Kakashi sighed, finally closing his book with an annoyed clap. The reason I am advising you to drop out of the exams is because you don't have what it takes to be a Chunin, Sasuke does. Between the three of you, you lack the required skills and maturity to put others before yourself that comes with being promoted, and above all, you require the most work to improve. Bullshit. The blonde scoffed, glaring up at the silver-haired man. I probably put the most work into this farce of a team. The Tem gets everything handed to him on a silver platter, while I work my off to get the skills and techniques I have. And don't even get me started on Haruno. The masked Jonin frowned at the blonde's words. She is, without a doubt, the weakest member of this team. The whiskered teen continued to rant. Her chakra reserves are barely above that of an academy student's, and her repertoire doesn't even extend beyond the henge, kawarimi, and bunshin. Basic Academy Jutsu. Naruto paused, looking the Jonin in his exposed eye. Ignoring the gathering crowd that was attracted by their disagreement and growing tension. One in particular took special interest in the conversation. Wearing a purple dodo on her chest, supported by 8 straps that meet on her back, forming a spider-like pattern. Her black hair styled into 2 horns on top of her head, which were secured into place with pink ribbons. Purple eyes gleaming with malicious mischief, one more so than the other. Hell, the only reason she survived her encounter with the Oto team was because they didn't see her as a threat. The kunoichi on their team toyed with her, mocking her the entire time. He continued. At this rate, the only future Haruno will have, is being a cum dumpster for an enemy shinobi until he grows bored of her holes and slits her throat, simply because of her lack in refusal to train and the fact that she foolishly believes that the damn Uchiha Tem will swoop in and rescue her. Kakashi couldn't help but grimace at the very bleak, and all too possible fate his blonde student described for the sole female of the team. And you say I don't have the maturity to put others before myself? Naruto challenged. Who was it that figured out the purpose behind your little bullshit bell test? Me. Who was it that switched places with Haruno, taking a poisoned stab wound to keep her and the client safe on our way to Nami no Kuni? Me. And who was it that saved your got caught in Zabuza's water prison? Silence. Me. The Uzumaki seethed. All you do is focus on the damn Uchiha, while leaving your other 2 students to flounder in their training, or in Haruno's case, no training at all. If all you wanted to do was train the damn bastard, you should have just taken him as an apprentice. Perhaps then, Haruno and I could have been placed under an actual competent sensei that would have taken the time to break Sakura out of her damn fangirl mentality and turn her into a proper kunoichi. Maybe under a competent sensei, I would have my flaws addressed and fixed. Now, Naruto, Kakashi began, shifting nervously under the stares of the spectators that had gathered, feeling a little embarrassed due to being called out like he was. It didn't help that some in the gathering crowd were some of his own colleagues and fellow Jonin sensei. I know you're upset at me for telling you to quit, but that is no excuse for telling lies. Off, Hitaki. The blonde growled, turning on his heel to leave. It's clear I made a mistake in actually placing my trust in you. You're just like every other sack of shit, always wanting to hold the demon brat back. The masked Jonin frowned at the lack of suffix that should be attached to his name, as well as the informal way the blonde had addressed him, implying that the whiskered teen had completely dismissed the man as his sensei. Know this, Hitaki. Naruto turned his head, glaring at the silver-haired Jonin. Not only will I not be dropping out of the finals, I will crush the Hyuga prick beneath my heel and your precious Uchiha as well, and regardless if I get promoted or not, I refuse to stay on this farce of a team. That's a promise. Not giving the now thoroughly embarrassed Jonin time to rebuke, Naruto stormed out of the hospital with a newly formed purpose. Not only was he going to knock the Hyuga bastard down a peg or two, he was also going to stick it to his failure of a sensei. So that is Kushina-sama's boy. The purple-eyed woman thought as she watched the teenage blonde depart, licking her lips in anticipation as she gripped a tattered and aged scroll in her right hand. Time to honor my promise. Training Ground 3. The sound of flesh colliding with hardened wood echoed across the training field as the teenage Jinchuriki unleashed his frustrations upon one of the 3 training posts. Frustrated because not only did his sensei, his father's last known surviving student, had simply brushed him off and told him to give up, but also because he allowed his carefully crafted mask to crack, giving his failure of a sensei a glimpse into the real Naruto, instead of the orange-wearing idiot that was always smiling. If he is half the shinobi he acts like he is, he should at least have his suspicions. A dark feminine voice reverberated within his mind, earning a slight chuckle from its blonde host. You and I both know that Hitaki has the Uchiha's ko far down his throat, the only thing that bastard can see is pubic hair. The blonde teen mentally replied. I'm just pissed that I allowed him to get to me and allowed my mask to slip, Sifheim. It needs to come off eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later. The kitsune stated with a sagely tone. Otherwise, you will lose yourself in your mask. I had already planned to take off my mask after the exams. Naruto sighed as he landed another strike against the training post, creating a large crack in the wood. However, he stopped and his head to the side a little, an annoyed expression forming on his face. And here, I thought you lot finally smartened up. Came the whiskered teen's annoyed remark as half a dozen individuals came out of the tree line. Consisting of 2 genin, 3 chunin and 1 lone civilian. Especially after the beating you received the last time you tried this shit. Yeah, well, we got a surprise this time. The ring leader of the ragtag group spoke up. And that snake whore isn't here to help you this time. Bitch is probably getting bent over in an alley somewhere by some desperate bastard. Another commented, earning a series of snickers from the group. Unfortunately, the blonde teen was well acquainted with this group of idiots. While there were no shortage of people within the village that hated him for what happened 16 years ago, the majority either kept their disdain to simple glares and hateful comments, or in the case of the few shop owners, taking a more unorthodox approach by simply refusing him entry or charging him a demon tax for his purchases. While a pain in the whiskered teens, not really against the law the old man put in place. These 6, however, were a constant pain in his. They were the very few that actually had the stupidity to physical assault him for the supposed murders he committed on the day of his birth. Which had he group arrested on a number of occasions, heavily fined, and even demoted, not that deterred them any. However, the ring leader of the group was right about one thing. He didn't have his best friend, Enko Mitarashi, to back him up this time. Then again, he wasn't an academy student anymore. With a grin of his own, he charged forward to meet the oncoming pack of idiots. Effortlessly ducking under a poorly telegraphed punch by one of the genin before bringing his own fist up to in a devastating uppercut, knocking the unfortunate genin off his feet, landing a few feet away in a heap. Disoriented but conscious, not wasting time, Naruto slid past the downed genin and drove his elbow deep into the solar plexus of one of the chunin that had moved in, knocking the wind out of the disgraced shinobi. Don't just stand there. The ring leader shouted at the other 3. Get the demon bastard. At the battle cry, the rest of the mob charged forward in an attempt to overwhelm the whiskered blonde. Pulling out various weapons to give themselves an even larger advantage over the demon brat as they charged towards him. Guess I should even the odds. Naruto grinned as he formed his infamous cross seal and created 2 clones to pop into existence to meet the 4 idiots head-on in a 3 versus 4 scuffle. The real Naruto though was focusing on one particular genin, the one that had made the earlier comment about his best friend. A sinister grin spread across his face as he closed in on his target, a grin Anko would be proud of, as he caught the genin by the wrist as he was making a stabbing motion and gave it a hard twist, being rewarded with the sound of the unfortunate teen's arm snapping at the forearm. Without hesitation, Naruto gripped the now loosened kunai and drove it into his unfortunate victim's groin area, ripping the poor genin's testicles apart. For an added insult, Naruto channeled a little bit of Raiden chakra into the kunai, completely electrifying the teen's genitals. Never, Naruto grinned as he looked into the pain-filled eyes of the genin. Ever talk like that about my hubby Haim, understand? Not even bothering waiting for a response, the whiskered teen pushed the prone genin to the ground and renewed his focus on his next victim, while he clones easily dispatched the lone civilian and remaining genin, leaving just a chunin left. Seeing their jobs done, the two clones dispersed themselves, leaving the original to finish this debacle off. How the hell did you reach Chunin rank? Naruto inquired in a mocking tone as he stalked towards the lone member of the group. Bribe the council for it. Suck them off. Because you guys are almost as weak as my failure of a teammate. However, the Uzumaki didn't get any further as an explosion of smoke erupted in front of him, blinding the blonde Jinchuriki for a split second. Which was all the time the Chunin needed to launch a barrage of 6 kunai towards the whiskered teen. One sailed harmlessly past the blonde's head, while 4 burrowed themselves deep within his torso at random points, one of which came dangerously close to puncturing his lung. The last one, however, found its mark in the Uzumaki's right eye, prompting him to elicit a pain-filled scream as he collapsed to his knees holding his hand over his right eye socket, which still had the kunai sticking out of it. Blood running down his face. You were supposed to wait for the signal, Tsubaki. The Chunin stated, looking towards the newcomer. She was a woman of average height, roughly around 5'2", give or take an inch. Her dark eyes glaring at the blonde Jinchuriki as she approached the duo. Her long black hair braided down her back while jaw-length bangs framed her face. Oh, shut it, Tsubaki snarled, her glare fixated on the blonde. I got tired waiting for you dumb asses to finish playing around and this little shit needs to pay for what happened to my fiancé. Shit, forgot that this bastard was responsible for what happened to Mizuki-san. By now, some of the others had begun to find their way back to their feet and hobble towards the group. 2 of which moved to get their severely injured friend to the hospital and no doubt report what the demon did, leaving only 3 of the original group and the newly arrived Tsubaki. Hey, all this for that traitor. Naruto spat, literally, as a glob of blood landed at the woman's feet. This of course only earned him a swift kick to his chest from the scorned woman, aggravating his wounds further. Pain exploded in his chest on the left side and he struggled to take in oxygen. A clear indication that his lung was just punctured. Mizuki-kun was not a traitor. Wham! He was a loyal shinobi. Wham! That loved this village. Wham! And you framed him. Tsubaki raged. You are the traitor. One final kick sent the blonde Jinchuriki on his back, skidding a few feet along the ground. You took him away from me. She snarled as she reached behind her and pulled out a ninjutsu from where it was holstered on her back as she stalked closer towards the blonde. And now, I will have my revenge. Don't worry, demon brat. The ring leader of the mob grinned. We'll take good care of that snake whore for ya. However, Tsubaki was frozen in place when she felt an eruption of malevolent killer intent behind her, prompting her and the others to turn around to see the sight of a lone dark-haired woman, standing no taller than 5'5", her hair styled up into 2 horn-like designs atop her head. Her left eye gleaming brightly, promising untold pain. WH, who are you? The Chunin stammered, his knees shaking in fear at the amount of killer intent the woman was releasing. No. It can't be, Tsubaki stammered, taking an unconscious step back as her ninjutsu clanged as it hit the ground. The purple dodo, the spider design the support straps created, the baggy off-white sweatpants and purple tights, and long fingerless gloves. Her bright pink painted fingernails and kunoichi combat sandals. She recognized it all. Juri, the Widowmaker, Han. What do you want? Another stammered, nearly pissing himself when the purple-clad woman licked her lips, as if eyeing prey to be devoured. I happen to have a. Juri grinned, licking her lips once more. Personal interest in that handsome blonde over there, bleeding out. Yo, you want to kill the brat too? Yuri's left eye roared to life once more as she grinned madly, signifying that the idiot had chosen the wrong words to utter. Seconds later, screams echoed off the surrounding trees. Ignoring the blood that now drenched the training field, Yuri approached the prone form of Naruto, whom had finally fallen unconscious due to the wounds he had received just moments earlier. Kneeling down, she cupped the whiskered teen's cheek, allowing her to get a good look at his blood-caked face, a genuine smile creeping across her face. Defiant to the end, even when faced with death, she whispered, "Just like your mother." Gently, she lifted him up and cradled him, departing the training field. SIN. Shinobi Information Network, Konoha Branch. Yuri Han observed through the observation window as a team of doctors and nurses seemingly danced around the operating room below her, working to save the young blonde's life that she had brought in not even an hour ago. 4 stab wounds across his torso, a punctured lung on his left side by one of the kunai that had been driven into his lung, multiple fractured ribs, a cracked sternum, and lastly, severe damage to his right eye, not unlike a similar injury Yuri herself had suffered years ago. Thus, having the Uzumaki teen have a feng shui engine implanted within the now empty socket. "So that's him," a crimson-haired woman commented from her right. She was rather tall for a woman, standing at a solid 5 foot 9 inches tall. Dressed in a uniquely designed gray battle suit that resembled an ordinary business suit, though 2 weapons lurked within the accompanying gloves and boots. The gloves concealing metal knuckles that could be electrically charged, that were capable of stunning and even electrocuting her victims at higher settings. While her boots were capable of granting her the ability to jump higher and further without the use of chakra. "I am going to go have a chat with the old monkey," Yuri commented, ignoring the other woman's statement. "And if he wakes up before you get back?" the crimson-haired woman inquired, prompting Yuri to stop and turn her head slightly to look at the other woman. Then explain what had to be done and the functionality of the feng shui engine, Maya. The black-haired woman instructed, resuming her trek. "I will be training him how to use it after he has healed up." "Very well," the now identified Maya replied, before smirking slightly. "Try not to destroy the old mont's office, if you can help it." "No promises." Yuri grinned. Hokage's office. Hiruzen rubbed his temples, attempting to alleviate the oncoming headache. Not even an hour ago, a long-standing genin was brought into the hospital with severe damage to his groin area with reports that he was attacked by the demon. Which of course had prompted an outcry from those that were present within the hospital to hunt down and kill the demon, once and for all. It had taken a handful of minutes for his Anbu and Jonin to quell the potential mob from forming. However, one particular kunoichi had set off on her own to the reported training ground that the genin was brought from, forcing the old man to follow, mostly to prevent the aforementioned kunoichi from doing anything too reckless, with a small team of Anbu. Only to be met with a morbid sight. Blood soaked the ground, splattered against the training post whilst bodies, horribly disfigured, littered the ground. Despite the mutilation, they were able to identify the so-called victims as the group that had constantly harassed the blonde Jinchuriki, and were also stupid enough to target Anko Mitarashi as well. The remaining victim, whom was left barely alive no doubt as a warning to others, was identified as none other than Mizuki Toji's estranged fiancé, Tsubaki Koto. Hiruzen ordered his Anbu to take the woman to the hospital so she could be interrogated later, by an eager snake mistress. However, there was a problem. Naruto Uzumaki was missing, though his blood was identified at the training ground. Which led to the elder Mon's current situation. Due to the current mood of the snake mistress, Hiruzen had opted to have Ibiki take over the interrogation of Tsubaki, knowing that even after getting the required information, Anko would have continued her interrogation of the woman. Interrogation and torture becomes an entirely different thing when it becomes personal, and due to the close friendship the two pariahs had, it was extremely personal for Anko. Something the snake mistress had not taken well, and Hiruzen was forced to ask his most trusted Anbu, and personal friend of Anko, to escort her out of the office to cool off for a bit. Knowing that at this moment only Yugao, aka Anbu Neko, would be able to calm the infuriated snake mistress. At this point, Hiruzen didn't think his day could get any worse. Wham! Apparently he was mistaken. One of the double doors to his office went flying off its hinges, embedding itself into the far wall, while the remaining door was left hanging loosely from its hinge before falling to the ground in a loud clatter. A lone female figure stood in the now empty doorway, her leg fully extended while her left eye glowed with mischievous intent and an insane grin plastered to her face. "Hey, you old bastard!" the woman greeted as she jumped up on the elder Mont's desk, crossing her legs. Inadvertently, pushing off some of the stacks of paper that were once stacked on top of the desk. Much to Hiruzen's dismay, Yuri Han, the elder village leader, greeted stiffly, slightly miffed at the woman's lack of respect. "I wasn't aware you were back on this side of the world. Well, the Outerlands got boring, so I decided to come back here to find something to entertain myself with." Yuri grinned. "Suppose it would be pointless to ask if you are here for business or pleasure then." "Silly monkey. Business is always pleasure for me, however." Her mood shifted from mischievous and playful to cruel and psychotic as her right leg snapped out of its lotus position and pinned the elder man to the back of his chair, prompting the Anbu on guard to surround the woman, their blades drawn. "You better have a damn good reason as to why I was never told about Kushina-sama's death." Hiruzen's expression shifted from one alarm to one of confusion as he heard this. "What do you mean?" he inquired, ignoring the foot on his throat. "I had ordered Jiraiya to contact you after it happened." Yuri snarled and pushed herself into a back flip off the desk, landing in the center of the Anbu gathered, though paying no mind to them. If anything, seemingly more annoyed than anything else that they thought she would be intimidated by them. "You actually trusted that sleazy sack of shit," the black-haired woman commented with disdain, flicking one of the ANBU's katana, almost as if mocking them. "You know that frog to spite Kushina-sama." Hiruzen frowned, knowing what the black-haired woman said was true. Jiraiya did have a rather unhealthy grudge against the now-deceased woman. Especially since Kushina had hidden highly advanced Uzumaki seals around the bathhouse that prevented his perverted student from spying on unknowing women, instead, trapping the man in a multi-layered genjutsu. Resulting in the pervert only seeing old men, sometimes engaging in with one another, regardless of which side of the bathhouse he was on. Even better, at least for the women, if Jiraiya attempted to flare his chakra to break the genjutsu, it would trigger alarms around the property. Not only alerting the women inside, but also Anbu to the area. The elder village leader also held no doubt that Jiraiya blamed Kushina for getting in between him and his student. Not allowing Minato to be swayed by the Toad Hermit's perversion, as well as implementing a very strong belief of family comes first mindset within the revered Yondaime. Something that Jiraiya was adamantly against, oftentimes putting himself first before others. A tendency he had attempted to push onto Minato, only to fail once Kushina had entered the picture. Looking to his Anbu, he gave a subtle signal for them to return to their posts. Knowing that if the woman wanted to, she could easily lay waste to them in mere seconds. Hesitantly, they retreated back to their hiding spots, eyeing the woman carefully. "I suspect that is not the only reason as to why you have returned," Hiruzen ventured, knowing well the woman before him wouldn't waste her time sticking around for something so trifling. No, if that were the case, she wouldn't waste time with words. She would have simply kicked the door in like she had done earlier, and beat the ever-living crap out of him and leave. Wordlessly, Yuri produced the tattered scroll and presented it to the old man. "This is," the elder man stammered as he looked upon the scroll, seeing that it bared the Uzumaki crest. A marriage contract. Yuri grinned, licking her lips excitedly. Between myself and Kushina-sama's son, Naruto Koi. Of course Kushina-chan would set up something like this. Hiruzen muttered, knowing the woman was very insistent that she was going to have a son when she was pregnant, and would even go as far as to draw up marriage contracts to ensure she had grandchildren. Unfortunately, I am currently have my Anbu searching for Naruto-kun myself. It appears he was involved in an altercation of sorts at Training Ground 3. Yuri grinned, prompting the elder man to turn his full gaze to her. Oh, don't look so surprised, old monkey, surely you had your suspicions already. Hiruzen frowned at this. In truth, he did suspect that the woman had something to do with the massacre that was discovered in the training field when she had literally kicked in his doors, especially considering the relationship the woman had with Kushina. Where is he? The Hokage asked, looking to the black-haired woman. Since his blood was found at the scene, I can only assume you took him somewhere else. By now, he should be out of the operating room and recovering at the Sin headquarters. The purple-eyed woman replied. Bastard did a number on him before I arrived, no doubt thanks to that Jonin bitch. I am surprised you left her alive. Hiruzen commented. Where the hell was Kakashi? Ha! That bastard. Yuri cackled. Cyclops ditched Naruto Koi at the hospital, even told him to drop out of the finals so he could focus on the Uchiha brat. The elder village leader frowned upon hearing this. Kakashi had practically begged him to put Naruto in his team. Originally, Hiruzen had thought that the man wanted to honor his sensei and train Minato's son, though it would appear the silver-haired Jonin either had other intentions or his emotions clouded his judgment. Hiruzen decided after this meeting was concluded, he would personally review all of Team 7's mission reports and look for any inconsistencies, no matter how small. Not sure what everyone sees in that arrogant brat. Yuri continued with an uncaring shrug. Kid acts like everyone should simply roll over and bow to him, simply because of a damn name. After the Uchiha massacre, many felt sympathetic for the boy and began to pamper him constantly. Hiruzen sighed. Whatever, kid can choke on A for all I care. She waved her hand dismissively. Anyways, just to let you know, I will be taking Naruto Koi as my official apprentice and will taking over his training. Hiruzen mulled it over in his head for a handful of seconds, though in reality, there really only was one option. If Yuri wanted to, she could have easily taken Naruto and left the village. Not that he would object, the blonde teen deserved a chance at happiness just like anyone else. However, not only would the village lose its Jinchuriki, which for all intent and purpose was a deterrent for war, he would also lose an extremely skilled kunoichi and last loyal snake summoner in Konoha in the form of Anko Mitarashi, whom would no doubt depart after her whiskered friend. Sometimes, the elder village leader wondered if the two were just friends or something more with how loyal they were to one another. I see no problem with that. The elder man replied as he brought out a blank scroll from his desk drawer to make it official. Since Hitaki has failed in his duty as the boy's sensei. However, Naruto-kun will have to remain a registered Konoha shinobi, to avoid any unwanted headaches in the future. Meh, I suppose I could hang around for a little while. The purple-eyed woman shrugged, reading over the scroll the old man had just given her. Who is Anko Mitarashi? She is someone extremely precious to Naruto-kun. Hiruzen answered, pulling out his tobacco pipe and filling it. The two of them have been friends for years now. I have no doubt that once she learns of you taking Naruto-kun under your tutelage, she won't be far behind. Which leads me to our next topic, Naruto-kun's heritage. More precisely, him being the last of his clan. You plan to put him in the village's clan restoration act. Yuri commented with a slight smirk. Kushina-sama mentioned the likelihood of Naruto Koi being put in it, and she only had one demand. And what would that be? No fangirls, no shy wallflowers, and absolutely no gold diggers. The purple-eyed woman stated with a feral-like grin. And I will personally test any potential bride. Naruto Koi will need women that can stand beside him, not behind him. Very well then. The Hokage stated with a smile, knowing that things were finally going to start looking up for his surrogate grandson. I leave Naruto-kun's training and other interests in your hands, Yuri-san. I look forward to seeing the fruits of your labor in the finals. By the time I am finished with him, Yuri grinned madly, her left eye glowing with mischief. Naruto Koi will crush everyone and leave only dust in his wake. The bitter antiseptic aroma with undertones of artificial fragrance contained within the soaps and cleaning solutions used by the staff assaulted the young teen's nostrils as he slowly became aware of his surroundings. A dull rhythmic beating of the heart monitor droned on in the background. Due to the lack of discomfort, it was clear that he was not in Konoha's hospital. His bandages wrapped firmly around his torso, with extra gauze around the stab wounds he had received from the kunai. While the IV lines were properly inserted, instead of being haphazardly thrust into his arm. While the doctors and nurses at Konoha's General Hospital didn't do anything that would hamper his overall recovery the few times he had been forced to go there, either for regular checkups or self-inflicted training injuries, it was clear that their bedside manners could use some work, at least when it came to him. Tentatively he reached up and brushed his fingers over the cloth that covered his right eye, a frown forming on his face as he recounted the events that had transpired at the training ground. He had hoped that Sif Chan's chakra would have been able to help replace the eye he had lost, but it appeared there were limitations to what injuries she could heal. As well as his own legendary Uzumaki healing factor. Still, the socket didn't feel empty. No, there was something behind the bandage. Ah, you're awake. An alluring voice came from the doorway, prompting the whiskered teen to take notice of the crimson-haired woman that stood there. She stood roughly the same height as himself, around 5'9", a pair of yellow-tinted sunglasses obscuring her bluish-green eyes. Most notable, aside from her vibrant crimson hair that cascaded down to her knees in a tight braid, was the gray skin-tight catsuit with black trimmings she wore that enhanced her feminine curves, accompanied by a black choker around her neck. The zipper down far enough to give him a rather generous view of her impressive cleavage. Draped over the catsuit was a simple white lab coat. With the injuries you had, I had expected you to be out for the remainder of the day. The woman continued as she entered the room. Not many can bounce back from multiple fractures, a punctured lung, and severe ocular trauma. Though, then again, not many have that legendary Uzumaki healing factor, nor are they the current Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Hearing this, Naruto visibly stiffened. Though he tried to rationalize how she would have access to such information, while not exactly a well-kept secret within the village, if he was even in Konoha anymore, it was one not openly talked about. For now, he simply marked it up to her having access to his medical file. You may relax, Uzumaki-san. The woman stated, offering a friendly smile. Name's Maya C. Viper, and it was my boss that was the one who brought you here. Your boss? Naruto inquired as he took a look around the room he was in. And just where is here, exactly? In reverse, you are in the SIN headquarters, acronym for Shinobi Intelligence Network, within Konoha. Maya explained. As for who my boss is, you'll be unfortunate enough to meet her as soon as she returns. She left to go talk to your Hokage about something. However, I have been instructed to go over the fundamentals of the feng shui engine that has replaced your right eye. The what? Was Naruto's intelligence response. The feng shui engine, the crimson-haired woman repeated with a slight sigh as she hated repeating herself. Though, she would let it slide as the whiskered teen was not familiar with such technology. As such, she would no doubt have to repeat various things, is a miniaturized version of our Tandon engine. Its purpose is to enhance your fighting potential by emitting very powerful chakra, sometimes called ki, due to how dense and potent it is. Naruto stared at her for a moment, as his mind tried to process what he had been told. While he didn't know exactly whatever a Tandon engine was, but it did sound like a powerful piece of technology. And now he had something similar to it implanted where his right eye once was. I am curious to see how yours will react in combat. Maya commented, a thoughtful expression on her face. I have seen it in action before from Juri, and it was truly impressive. I wonder how the QB's own chakra will affect it. Juri Han, my boss and the current head of SIN, Maya explained, also known as the Widowmaker, due to her penchant for killing her enemies brutally. And she was the one who brought me in. Naruto stated, remembering the woman had said that her boss and brought him in, shortly after the woman had entered the room he currently resided in. That is correct. She nodded. Once you are healed up enough, she will not only be training you for the Chunin finals, but also how to properly utilize your new upgrade. This had caught the young Uzumaki by surprise, as he had half expected to rely on himself and Sif-chan for his training for the month. Not that he didn't have options, he knew Anko would have helped him during her free time when she wasn't busy in the torture and interrogation building, though with knowledge of Orochimaru infiltrating the village, she would no doubt be very busy the next few weeks. If not longer. However, that did remind him that he needed to have a serious talk with the snake mistress for the stunt she attempted the pull in the Forest of Death, having overheard what had happened from a loose-lipped Anbu member that was in the hospital earlier. Anything else you can tell me about her? Naruto asked, earning a mischievous grin from the redhead. Only that she was close to Kushina, the evil Uzumaki, your mother. Elsewhere in the village, an irate young woman aggressively pushed her way through the crowd of civilians that swarmed the main street that led into the village, earning herself mutterings of irritation of those she had jostled. Not that she cared, she wasn't in the mood to deal with anyone's shit right now. Shinobi or civilian, her loss in the preliminaries didn't just sting, it burned within her like a raging inferno. Not necessarily the loss in itself, a loss she could handle. After all, defeat is how one learns of their weaknesses and how to correct them and grow. Loss is natural. No, what infuriated her was who she had been forced to lose to. Sakura Haruno. The bubble-gum-haired girl was a civilian, with her head filled with stories of knights in shining armor rescuing their princesses, masquerading as a kunoichi. It was an insult to true kunoichi everywhere. Now granted, she was little better, but at least she had the excuse that she was hiding behind a mask to conceal her true potential, under her parents' insistence. While she could understand where her father was coming from, not wanting his little princess to attract too much unwanted attention. Understandable, given the Mont's position, but Inoichi should have eased off the insistence once she became a genin and allow her mask to slowly fall off. But no, the Yamanaka clan head had stood firm in his stance to not reveal her skills until the time was right. Though Ino was beginning to doubt her father would ever decide when it would be the right time. Instead, preferring his little princess to stay in the back where it was safe, and let her teammates and sensei put themselves at risk while she offered support. If daddy was so insistent on me being safe, why did he allow me to enroll in the academy in the first place, knowing full well what being a kunoichi entailed? Ino mentally ranted. PFF'd. Clan pride in being an overly protective father, like oil and water. Her mother on the other hand was a completely different story. At the time when the woman had suggested she pursue the lone Uchiha survivor, Ino had thought it was the perfect addition to her mask. Blend in with the masses and not stand out, the perfect live training exercise for an aspiring kunoichi. And so, she had mixed in with the other fangirls and played her part perfectly. Perhaps too perfectly. Not only was she forced to push away the boys she actually did have a crush on in order to keep up her visage, and her one-time childhood friend, Sakura, had broken off their friendship. All for the damn Uchiha. Ino began doubting her mother's intentions when the young blonde was easing her father into the idea of her having a boyfriend by mentioning that she was interested in another boy in her class, not mentioning exactly who the boy could be, only alluding that it wasn't the Uchiha. While Inoichi was relieved to learn that his daughter wasn't only focusing on just the Uchiha, her mother on the other hand was an entirely different matter. The woman had looked downright insulted that the young heiress had even dared to look at another man that wasn't the sole Uchiha, and had gone into an entire rant of how she should focus only on the Uchiha and no one else. Ino was jarred out of her thoughts when she collided with something, or rather, someone that wasn't going to move like the others she had pushed through, almost sending the young heiress on her rear. Mutterings and whispers echoed as the crowd around them silenced, prompting the blonde mind walker to look at what had stopped her. "Oh shit," came a frantic whisper from somewhere within the crowd of people. "I am not going to be the one to tell Inoichi how his little princess was murdered." Another harshly whispered, "She's gonna die." My, came a taunting voice from in front of her, prompting the blonde teen to look at the individual she had bumped into. Someone should watch where they're going. Blue met purple as their eyes connected as Ino found herself face to face then none other than Yuri Han. While never having met the woman personally, Yuri's reputation was well known throughout the elemental nations. Most notable were her ventures into the outerlands, uncharted lands outside the veil that surrounded the elemental nations, and stories of her conquests, spread by those that had either witnessed or survived their encounter with the Widowmaker. Yuri Han, Ino acknowledged, trying not to show the fear she felt swelling up inside of her. "It's rude, not excuse yourself after bumping into someone." Yuri chastised the young blonde in a sarcastic manner. "Didn't your parents ever teach you manners? The same could be said for you." Ino retorted, not breaking eye contact with the woman, earning a series of gasps from the crowd that was silently watching them. All the while, ignoring her instincts screaming at her to flee. Her pride had been battered, bruised, beaten, and left in an alleyway stripped of its dignity. If standing her ground before, arguably, one of the most dangerous women in the known world didn't uplift her in the eyes of her peers, then nothing would. Silence hung in the air between the two until Yuri threw her head back and began cackling with glee, causing those that had gathered around the two to scurry back, hopefully out of the line of fire. The sudden laughter prompted the young mind walker to tense her muscles, preparing to defend herself should the need arise. Though she wasn't delusional, she knew that if Yuri decided to attack she would only be able to last no more than 3 seconds. 5 seconds if the woman decided to play with her. Ha ha, Yuri laughed, turning her attention back to Ino, licking her lips. "I like you, princess. You actually have a set on you." Ino stood there, confusion written all over her face. "Unlike all these pathetic bitches that piss themselves just at the sight of me, you actually had the tits to stand up and look me in the eye and challenge me. I love it." The black-haired woman cackled before it died down and she sauntered over to where Ino stood, draping an arm around the blonde's neck, bringing her in rather close. To the point their cheeks were almost touching, making Ino feel slightly uncomfortable. "So, are you going to give me shit about my match during the preliminaries like everyone else?" Ino groused, figuring she may as well get it over with. Didn't see it and don't care." Yuri shrugged. Ino didn't know if she should feel relieved by the fact that the woman didn't see her match against Sakura, or insulted by the fact that the woman so casually dismissed it. You see, I am looking for a woman by the name of Anko Mitarashi. The purple-eyed eccentric woman explained. Know her? Yeah. She works with my father. Ino replied, a little unsure and concerned as to why this woman was looking for Anko of all people. If she isn't interrogating someone, she is usually at the dango stand just down the road. Well, let's go then. Yuri exclaimed as she began to drag the poor Yamanaka heiress alongside her. Wait, Ino cried out. Why am I going? Well, I don't know what this Anko person looks like, was the response. And besides, I like your company, princess. My name is Ino. Ino ground out, getting annoyed at being called princess by the older woman. Noted, princess, Yuri stated, earning another growl from the blonde as she was dragged along. Now let's go. SIN. Headquarters, late afternoon. Naruto laid back in his newly assigned bed, having been disconnected and released from the medical wing, trying to wrap his head around everything Maya had explained to him. First and foremost was his new eye. While the technical aspects were still lost on him, he did understand that it operated a lot like the Uchiha Prick's Sharingan eye to a degree. While it couldn't copy the techniques being used, unless certain conditions were met which Maya had been tight-lipped about, it could however predict attack patterns and movements. Something that would no doubt prove to be very useful in the finals. Though he still had no idea what the red-haired woman meant about the eye increasing his fighting potential. Originally, the whiskered teen thought that she was talking about its utilities on the battlefield, but Maya had stressed that they were two completely different things, reassuring him that Yuri will instruct him on how to utilize it when she returns. Of course, with a reminder that there would be no training until he was full healed, which knowing him wouldn't take more than a day or two, despite the severity of some of his wounds. Another thing that Maya had conversed with him about, regarding his newly implanted eye, was its appearance. Due to it being an implant that was cybernetic in nature, it could have its appearance altered to look like his normal eye color, or change its appearance entirely. Currently, the Uzumaki was considering if he wanted it to look like his normal eye so as not to attract attention, or if he should say it, and have it take the appearance of something shocking and horrifying to intimidate those around him. However, what occupied his mind the most was this Yuri Han. The only thing he knew about her so far was that she was the current head of the Shinobi Information Network, which was the organization that foot the bill for his surgeries and the ones that designed his new eyeball. But above all that, Maya had said that this woman personally knew his mother and was really close to her, which filled his head with so many questions. Mainly due to the fact that he couldn't just openly ask about either of his parents in the village, due to the fact that technically, he wasn't supposed to know just yet. So he couldn't just walk up to someone that would know of his mother or father and ask them about his parents. Mainly because it would incite a panic for two reasons. First and foremost, would be the collective of idiots that would be in denial about being the son of one of their most feared kunoichi and their revered hero. Secondly would be that of his parents' enemies, both outside and inside the village. The ones from outside the village he could handle, the ones inside was a different story. He knew full well that both his father and mother had rubbed a lot of people the wrong way throughout their respective careers and rise through the ranks, some of which were now sitting on the civilian council. And diplomatic enemies with a pen were far more dangerous than any shinobi or kunoichi he would encounter outside the village. Now though, he had someone he could openly ask that personally knew her, and hopefully get some answers and perhaps a few stories about his mother. He had asked Sif about her, but much to the embarrassment of the vixen, she had admitted that she had slept most of the time while being contained with the hot-tempered Uzumaki woman, due to the fact that Kushina hardly ever called on her power. Instead, relying on her own, which had earned the woman a large amount of respect from the kitsune and the primary reason as to why the foxy woman had given the Uzumaki princess's son a fair chance early on. All I gotta do is wait for this Yuri woman to return. Naruto mumbled softly to himself as he closed his lone eye, allowing a peaceful sleep to fall over him. Dango stand and bar, same time. Thunk. Another dango stick found itself embedded halfway into the wall across from an incensed Anko Mitarashi, completing the last touch on the Uzumaki clan symbol she had made out of the dango sticks she had thrown. A clan that had been essential in the founding of Konohagakure, acting as a mediator between the Uchiha clan and the Senju clan, only to be nearly wiped out nearly 3 decades ago by the combined forces of Kurigakure, Iwagakure, and Kumogakure. And how did those sacks of shit that sat on the Elder Council pay tribute to their fallen clan and longtime allies? By removing every mention of them from the Academy's curriculum, as well as the public library, and stealing their clan symbol. Supposedly to honor their fallen comrades. Anko had thought otherwise. Without a doubt, the snake mistress was sure the real reason the swirl was even implemented in the leaf's symbol was due to the fact that the Uzumaki clan had more renown than Konoha did, and those jealous old bastards, and bitch, that an independent clan had more recognition than an established hidden village. And now the only known surviving clan member of the Uzumaki clan has been attacked, and is now missing. Anko muttered to herself, taking another bite out of her dango before slamming her fist on the countertop, startling nearby patrons. And damn that old man. Hey, watch the countertop. Came an annoyed voice from down the bar, earning the barkeep a scowl from the snake mistress. Bad enough you use my wall as your own personal dartboard, Kami Almighty, why the hell did Anbu Neko have to leave you unattended? Hey, blame the old man. Anko retorted. If it wasn't for him, I would be thoroughly enjoying my work, getting every ounce of information out of that bitch and then some. Look hun, the woman sighed as she moved down to talk with her regular customer and friend. I know you're afraid. Anko shot the woman a dirty look. Oh, don't give me that look. The barkeep scoffed, not the least bit intimidated by the snake mistress. You can still be a bad bitch and still be afraid for someone. Now, as I was saying, the woman continued, I know you're afraid, but you have to trust in Hokage-sama's decision and trust that he did what he did to protect you, not the suspect. What would he tell your little pocket of sunshine after you got yourself locked up for going too far with the suspect? A frown formed on the snake mistress's face. She had been so upset due to the fact that her little Whiskers was missing, and all they had found were traces of his blood at the scene, that she didn't even think nor care about the consequences of her actions, should she had been allowed to go through with them. Maybe. Anko sighed, relenting to the fact that the barkeep was correct. Still would make me feel a lot better if I could hear that bitch scream though. Anyways, thanks for the pep talk Kimiko. Yeah. The woman now identified as Kimiko responded as she set to work wiping down the countertop in front of them. So, Anko repeated. When he turns up again, Kimiko grinned mischievously. You finally going to make him as yours? A light blush dusted the snake mistress's cheeks due to being called out so bluntly by her friend. You know, if Nai-chan were here, she would be chastising you about encouraging me to go after a younger man. Anko commented with a sarcastic undertone. While she knew the famed genjutsu mistress had good intentions, it was just beyond frustrating that the woman constantly tried to hook Anko up with men her own age range. Of course, every attempt had ended in one disastrous failure after another. Not due to any fault of her own. Each of the supposedly good guys Kurenai had set her up with had all been after one thing, and when they didn't get it, they would hurl insults at her. The worst, however, had been none other than Iruka Yumino. The bastard had attempted to use his own connection, and supposed brother-like relationship with Naruto to weasel himself in. Though the snake mistress knew, not only from the mon's body language, but from Naruto himself that the whiskered teen didn't see the man as a brother in the slightest. Hell, the two of them even had suspicions that Iruka was one of the primary culprits in attempting to sabotage the blonde's studies. Ah yeah, the expert on relationships. Kimiko scoffed. Because her love life is so perfect. Enko couldn't help but snort at this. It was a sad fact that both the snake mistress and Kimiko knew. While Asuma was a respectable shinobi, and an overall decent person, his eyes wandered. While she had no proof, Enko was fairly certain the man would spend time in brothels while out of the village. The two of them had attempted to warn the Genjutsu mistress about her mon's wandering eye, but it fell on deaf ears as she casually dismissed it of him being observant of his surroundings like a proper shinobi should. Well, the snake mistress sighed. We tried to warn her. Just so you know, the barkeep said, when it happens, I am going to fly a big banner over my bar saying, I told you so. Enko couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of Kimiko flying a massive banner over her bar top, while an emotionally distraught Kurenai drowned her sorrows in sake. Thanks Kimiko, for talking some sense into me. The snake mistress expressed her gratitude. No telling what I would have done if I kept my original mindset for much longer. Well, I'll waive my usual consoler's fee this time. The woman jested, before turning her attention to a group of patrons entering the establishment. Anyways, I need to get back to work. Call me if you need anything. Enko nodded silently, turning her attention back to her dango before she noticed the entire stand suddenly go silent, almost as if everyone had suddenly disappeared. She didn't have time to ponder as she suddenly felt the weight of someone's arm hanging casually of her shoulder. Looking to her left, brown pupil-less eyes met with purple. The woman that was now hanging over the snake mistress was a little shorter than herself, with her black hair tied up into horns at the top of her head, her left eye seemingly glowing brighter than her right. Behind her, stood a visibly concerned Ino Yamanaka, whom had seemingly been dragged her by the strange woman. So, you're the infamous Anko Mitarashi, Konoha's snake mistress. The woman stated, licking her lips as if in anticipation. I hear that you're really, close to my fiancé. Listen lady, I don't know who the hell your fiancé is, but I can promise you I am not close to him. Hell, there is only one guy the first I'm interested in and as far as I know, he's still single. Anko retorted, offended by the fact that yet another woman thought she was seducing their man, no doubt thanks to the rumors spread about her. Who the hell are you, anyways? Name's Yuri Han. The black-haired woman grinned before bringing the unfortunate Yamanaka in close with her other arm. I trust you already know Princess here. Ino, the snake mistress looked at the blonde teen in concern. You alright? Not the worst thing that's happened to me today. The mind walker sighed, having since resigned herself to her fate of being a tag-along to one Yuri Han. Hey barkeep, rounds are the three of us. Yuri called out, getting the tender's attention as she placed a rather generous sum of money on the countertop. This is going to be a long night. Ino sighed, as a bottle of warm sake was placed in front her. Not wanting to insult her companion whom had already paid for multiple rounds for the three of them, the young teen took the bottle and took a long drink from it. Taking note that the taste was agreeable to her, surprisingly. So, what's this about? Enko inquired. You accuse me of being close to your fiancé, and then buy us a round of drinks. Without saying a word, Yuri produced a single scroll and handed it to the purple-haired woman to read. Upon seeing a familiar clan symbol on the scroll, Enko's stomach plummeted. Cautiously, she unrolled the paper and read over the contents. A look of confusion marring her face. This is. Yup. Yuri cut off the snake mistress. We have some things to talk about. SIN. Headquarters, evening. Light breathing could be heard in the darkened room as two feminine figures stumbled through the doorway of the room, surprisingly not waking the lone occupant in the bed. Both women clearly intoxicated, as they tried to stifle their giggling as they approached the rather spacious bed. As quietly as they could in the drunken state, the two removed their clothing and slowly crawled under the blankets with their unsuspecting victim. The only response the whiskered teen had as two warm bodies pressed against him, was a small groan in satisfaction. Without a doubt, the next morning was going to be interesting for Naruto Uzumaki. Hiruzen let out a tired sigh as he read over one of the countless mission scrolls that were now stacked upon his large desk, separated in two separate piles. All of which pertained to the missions completed by Team 7. On one side, were the reports given to him by Kakashi Hatake. The other, client testimonies of how the team performed their given tasks, with Anbu Neko, encouraging all the clients to be unbiased in their assessments. Needless to say, Hiruzen was deeply disappointed in Hatake. It was evident upon comparing the two reports of the team's earlier missions, that the masked Jonin downplayed the teenage Uzumaki's contribution towards the mission while elevating, and in some cases, exaggerating the Uchiha's own work ethic. The particular mission scroll from one of the few clients that didn't need any coercion from Neko had gone into detail as to how the Uchiha had nearly destroyed his garden, due to Sasuke's inability to tell the difference between crop and weed. While the Uzumaki worked diligently to repair the damages the Uchiha had caused. A stark contrast to Kakashi's own report that blamed Naruto for the damage, and had even gone as far as to dock the Genin's cut of the mission payout. Something that Hiruzen would notice would become a reoccurring theme with each and every mission scroll, much to the elder mont's regret as he allowed it to happen, trusting his shinobi to be truthful in their reports. Each and every scroll, it was the same thing. The Uchiha would do something to upset the client, Naruto would repair the damage his teammate did, and Kakashi would report the mission's completion while chastising Naruto, and heaping praise upon the Uchiha before docking Naruto's cut of the payout. Seems I will need to reimburse Naruto-kun for his wrongful pay cuts. Hiruzen sighed, setting down the latest mission scroll in its designated pile. And it looks like I will need to have a long discussion with Hatake about his actions and blatant favoritism. The elder village leader then picked a large scroll that held the testimonies of Tazuna, Tsunami, and the rest of the villagers that resided within Nami no Kuni. Mentally preparing himself for what was to come. He already knew Kakashi's version of how Naruto disobeyed direct orders, endangering the mission, and risking his teammates, namely Sasuke's, lives. As expected, the client's report heavily differed from the report Kakashi had given. Tazuna had praised the blonde for putting himself in harm's way to protect not only the super bridge builder, but also his teammate, Sakura, when one of the demon brothers had gotten away from Sasuke and charged towards the two. Naruto, with his quick thinking, had replaced himself with Sakura and took a puncture wound to the palm of his hand from the spiked gauntlet that had been laced with poison. Before knocking out his assailant. Tazuna's report then recounted the events during the team's first encounter with Zabuza, and how Kakashi had gotten himself captured by Zabuza, something the masked Jonin had seemingly forgot to include in his own report, and how once again, albeit with a little help from the Uchiha, Naruto had devised an ingenuous plan to free the silver-haired Jonin from the water prison Zabuza had the man trapped in. The next part of the scroll depicted the team's time spent at the bridge builder's home, clearly written by the mont's daughter, Tsunami. The young woman wrote that during the team's stay at their home, Kakashi would be apathetic to their hospitality, while both Sakura and Sasuke would be downright rude to their hostess, the latter making demands when something wasn't to his liking. Lastly, there was Naruto. The only one on the team that went out of his way to thank Tsunami for her time and effort, and even helped the young widow around the house. Hiruzen couldn't help but grin to himself. With the way the young woman was writing about the whiskered teenager, one might think she developed a crush on the lad. She also began to recount how Kakashi would train his students, giving both Naruto and Sakura some mundane exercise, while he would disappear with the Uchiha for hours at a time. Of course, Sakura would only do the bare minimum of her assigned training before taking off to stalk her crush or to lounge on the futon and daydream. Meanwhile, Naruto would continue training well into the evening hours when he would come in to shower. As that dried blood, Hiruzen mused as he peered at the brownish-red droplets that stained the scroll. His aging mind quickly putting the pieces together, as it became evident that Tsunami was fantasizing about something she wanted to do, or perhaps, already did with the whiskered teen. The last half of the scroll depicted what had transpired both at the home of the bridge builder and the Battle of the Bridge, clearly written by both father and daughter. The first few paragraphs went into detail how Kakashi and the other two and left with her father, leaving Naruto behind. Which she was thankful for, as shortly afterwards a pair of Gado's lackeys had shown up to kidnap the young woman and kill her son. The report from the young woman went on to regale how Naruto had swooped in, saved her son and rescued her in the process, eliminating both would-be kidnappers and securing them before creating half a dozen shadow clones to watch over her, then leaving towards the bridge to aid his team. The next part was clearly written by Tazuna, as the bridge builder went on to explain how despite their best efforts, the outlook was grim for both Kakashi and Sasuke as both Zabuza and his accomplice, a young teenage boy by the name of Haku, were backing the two Konoha shinobi into a corner. Without a doubt in the bridge builder's mind, Naruto's arrival was the turning point of the Battle of the Bridge, as it was dubbed. According to the elder bridge builder, Naruto had managed to distract Haku long enough for the Uchiha to escape the dome of ice mirrors the rogue shinobi had trapped him in with a clever use of shadow clones and distractions. It was unfortunate that neither Haku nor Zabuza survived the battle, Haku having taken a lightning jutsu to the chest courtesy of Kakashi to save his father figure, while Zabuza massacred Gado and his army of thugs in his final breath. Hiruzen was positive that the teenage Uzumaki would have been able to talk the two into joining Konoha with his patented, talk no jutsu. Having read over all of these reports, I am glad I agreed to let Yuri take him as her apprentice. Hiruzen thought to himself as he tossed the scroll onto the ever-growing pile of mission scrolls. Though I feel a great swell of pity for the boy, and anyone who will be unfortunate enough to face him once she is done with him. A knock at the freshly repaired door broke him from his musings. Enter, he called out. Upon the invitation, both Ibiki and Anko entered the room. Over the past week, Hiruzen had noticed that the snake mistress had been in better spirits, almost giddy at times. Enough so, that the elder village leader deemed her safe enough to sit in on the interrogation of Tsubaki as it was conducted by Ibiki. Here is my report, Hokage-sama. Ibiki stated as he handed the village leader the scroll, detailing all the information they had extracted from the disgraced Jonin. She was rather forthcoming when Anko mentioned inviting Yuri Han into the room. Hiruzen could only sweat drop as the snake mistress shrugged her shoulders. Anyways, it appears that Tsubaki was given falsified reports of the now dubbed, the scroll incident, elaborating Mizuki's innocence, as well as implicating that Uzumaki framing Mizuki for the theft. Ibiki informed the elder man. Hell, if it wasn't for the fact that I wrote up the original reports, I would have thought they were genuine as well. Who would have access to such reports? Hiruzen questioned out loud, mostly to himself as he tried to think of any potential subjects. And to have such intimate knowledge of what had transpired that night. Unfortunately, Tsubaki does not know the identity of her informant. Ibiki stated, crossing his arms over his chest. Which is not surprising, considering how emotionally fragile she was. I doubt she even thought to question this unknown informant's motives. Something I will have Jiraiya look into. The elder Hokage sighed, hoping the village's spy master would be able to shine some light on this mystery, and why this unknown individual would target young Naruto. In the meantime, there is another matter we must address. Reparation. The head of the torture and interrogation replied, earning a nod from the Hokage and a small frown from the snake mistress, whom seemed to have something on her mind that she was mulling over. Unfortunately, with her not being for any notable family, compiled with the fact that she refused to do any missions after Mizuki's betrayal, Tsubaki has little in the way of monetary value to pay for reparations. Hiruzen stated, due to the fact that Naruto was the son of the revered Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze, and the sole heir of the Uzumaki clan after the disappearance of his mother, Kushina Uzumaki, even if both were kept secret from the general populace and the whiskered teen himself for security reasons, the attempted assassination on him would send a shock wave of ramifications throughout the village and beyond. Clans such as the Hyuga and Inuzuka would demand answers as to why it was allowed to happen in the first place and would no doubt question the Hokage's ability to keep the village safe. Namely Sum, due to the feral woman's close friendship, almost sister-like relationship with Kushina. The feral woman had still yet to forgive him for not allowing her to adopt Naruto at a young age. So, monetary compensation is out of the question. Anko spoke up for the first time since she entered the office. Unless we liquidate all of her assets. Indeed. The Hokage sighed. The medical treatment Naruto-kun required would make even our more prosperous of clans hard-pressed to pay them off. So even if we were to liquidate all of Tsubaki's assets, it wouldn't even make a dent in the overall bill. We are fortunate that Sin foot the bill for his operations. Sin? Ibiki inquired, having vaguely heard of the organization before. Primarily that they operated outside the Veil in the Outerlands. Shinobi Information Network. Hiruzen answered, giving a side glance to the snake mistress before continue. The current head, Yuri Han, has a vested interest in Naruto-kun, and has taken over his training. Damn, not sure if I should feel sorry for the kid or not, knowing what that woman can do. The large, scarred man stated. Should be entertaining, if nothing else, to see what he will be capable of in the finals. That Hyuga prick won't have a prayer. The snake mistress grinned. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. The village leader turned the discussion back to where they started. What action should we take with Tsubaki Koto? Silence hung between the three for a handful of seconds. In all honesty, Hiruzen was surprised and relieved that Anko had not outright suggested execution yet, considering her mindset a week ago. No doubt in his mind that Naruto himself was the primary reason for the snake mistress's good mood. I may have an idea. Ibiki finally spoke up, prompting the other two to look at him. An unorthodox idea. Holding cell 143, Tsubaki Koto. The young woman of 24 years old sobbed in the corner of her cell, her jaw-length black bangs matted to her wet skin as tears streamed down her cheeks. All throughout her cell was papers and partially unraveled scrolls, strewn about. Official reports of the night her fiancé had betrayed the village, as well as condemning evidence taken from Mizuki's own home after his arrest. Papers detailing meeting points between himself and the notorious traitor, Orochimaru. Written transactions for women the man had seduced and given to the snake Sanin for experimentation, as well as plans to acquire the two clan heiresses from his own class to sell off, after he had grown bored of them. The most damning, however, was the journal of her late fiancé lying face down on the ground before her. In it, detailed his biggest betrayal of all. After the scroll heist, Mizuki had made an agreement with Orochimaru that she would be given to him as well, in exchange for a moderate compensation. Not to be used for experimentation, but rather to be used as the traitor's next body when his current one finally gave out. 250,000 ryo. That was all her loyalty was worth to Mizuki. Having read through all of the evidence that had been presented to her, Tsubaki could only curse herself. She had allowed her unknown informant to manipulate her emotions with honeyed words, sweet lies, and false promises. Foolishly believing them, as if Mizuki would magically be released from prison after she had succeeded in killing the Uzumaki. And now my foolishness has led me to my death. She mentally lamented. To attack a fellow comrade carried its own severe consequences, but to attack the village's primary war deterrent practically guaranteed her execution. While the fools she had agreed to help in their attack on the Uzumaki teen had believed she wanted to kill him due to some misguided notion that he was the Kyuubi incarnated, she wasn't that narrow-minded. She knew full well the difference between the prisoner and the warden. No, her sole purpose in targeting the whiskered teen was to avenge her, wrongfully, imprisoned fiancé. Tsubaki was brought out of her self-loathing by a loud clanging sound as the door to her cell opened, revealing a cat-masked Anbu with long flowing purple behind the feminine figure. Tsubaki Kato, the cat-masked Anbu stated in a neutral tone. You are to accompany me. Didn't take the old man long to sign off on my execution. The black-haired woman sighed, seeing little point in addressing the village leader by his title. Having resigned herself to her fate, Tsubaki pushed herself off the floor and allowed the Anbu to cuff her, before being led out of her cell. Unaware that it was not her execution she was being led to, but rather a second chance at life. Training Ground 44, Forest of Death. Desolation. That was all that surrounded the two combatants. Large trees that had once reached towards the heavens were charred and broken in hundreds of pieces and strewn across the forest floor. Massive craters, measuring at least 2 meters wide and 3 meters deep, scared the earth below them as the two continued to trade blows with one another in quick succession. The whiskered blonde dodging another blow aimed at his head before returning one of his own, putting his opponent on the defense for a few seconds. His right eye glowing a malicious red, taking the appearance of a certain nine-tailed fox. Over the course of the week when he was not being trained into the ground by his fiancée, he had settled on having his new eye remain his normal blue color for the most part, until he activated it. Then it would take the appearance of Sif's eye to strike fear into his unfortunate victim's soul, much to the vixen's enjoyment and approval, finding it flattering even. No doubt it would cause a panic amongst the populace of Konoha. That wasn't the only change the blonde Jinchuriki had undergone. Gone was his horrid bright orange track suit. His new attire consisted of a pair of black Anbu pants held up with a dark red belt adorned with a fox head buckle, surrounded by 9 tails, along with a pair of combat shinobi sandals and accompanying fingerless gloves that had metal plates with the Uzumaki swirl on the back of the hand. His torso remained bare, showing off his toned chest and abs, having foregone a shirt, though he would sometimes wear a mesh sleeveless shirt much to a certain snake mistress's enjoyment. The last piece of his new outfit hung loosely from a lone branch. A burnt orange trench coat with a blood-red inner lining. Jumping back, he avoided an axe kick that shattered the ground once more. Quickly moving to create more distance, Naruto bounded backwards a few more meters before settling in a defensive stance as he awaited the black-haired woman to renew her attack. Her purple left eye glowing brightly as she licked her lips in anticipation, clearly enjoying their exchange. You've gotten better, Naruto Koi. Yuri grinned, before launching a renewed attack, putting her fiancé on the defensive once more. Well, Naruto grunted as he caught the punch she had thrown at him, grappling her arm and bringing her face in close to his while his hands locked behind her head, keeping her close. It helps that I have an attractive and that actually instructs me. Are you trying to use Anko-chan's seduction tactics to unbalance me, Naruto-koi? Yuri grinned as she threw her weight backwards, breaking his hold on the back of her neck and delivering a quick kick to his chest, sending him sprawling backwards on the ground, whilst she landed softly with practiced grace. While a good attempt, such tactics won't work on me. The black-haired woman stated with a confident grin. Yeah, Naruto groused as he pushed himself up off the ground. You and your damn trance. Trance was what Yuri had called her mental discipline that allowed her to focus on just the battle, and nothing else. Making any distractions practically useless against her. Even varying degrees of genjutsu were useless against her, due to her potent chakra that created her ki. Don't worry about it, Naruto-koi, I will be teaching you how to utilize your own form of trance, after I am comfortable with your progress of your feng shui engine. She reassured, as she wanted to give her fiancé every advantage he could get. I've been meaning to ask. The blonde began, taking a relaxed stance. I know Maya-san explained that the feng shui engine is a miniaturized version of the Tanden engine, but what exactly is the Tanden engine? You'll have to ask Maya for the scientific details. Yuri waved off the techno-jargon before giving a simplistic explanation. But like our eyes, it generates and harnesses ki while enhancing the user's fighting potential. What sets it apart is the sheer power it emits, and that unlike our eyes, it doesn't need to meet any special conditions to mimic techniques used against it, since it can assimilate any DNA material from its opponent, and store for later use. Naruto was silent as he thought over the information his fiancé had given him about the device. With the way it described, it was like the Sharingan only multiplied by 1,000. The fact that all it needed was a bit of blood to copy any technique meant that it didn't even need to see the technique used. And with blood being very easy to come by on the battlefield, there was no limit to how many techniques the Tanden engine could copy. However, only one was ever made. Yuri continued, breaking the blonde from his musing. What happened to it? The person who designed it had it implanted within her own body. The purple-eyed woman grinned. Who was it? Your mother, came the reply. Kushina-sama also founded SIN as a means to keep an eye on things around the elemental nations and beyond, as well gather intel on what exactly happened to Uzushiogakure. Specifically, Konoha's involvement. What do you mean? Naruto inquired, looking to his dark-haired fiancé to clarify. How much do you know about Uzushiogakure? The blank look on the whiskered blonde's face was all the dark-haired woman needed to see to get her answer, causing her to snarl slightly. The hypocrites blatantly fly the clan's symbol on their headbands and jackets, but struck them from the history books. Whether it was simply removed from the curriculum of the academy or the entire history of the village remained to be seen. Something she intended to find out. Should have figured, bastards. Yuri sighed, gaining a hardened look. She would be having words with the old monkey about this blatant dishonor against one of the founding clans of Konoha. Deciding it would be best to give Naruto a short rundown of what she knew, she relaxed in a lotus position on the ground, prompting the blonde teen to do the same. Anyways, nearly 30 years ago your mother's homeland Uzushiogakure, which was located in Uzu no Kuni, was invaded and razed by the combined forces of Iwagakure, Kumogakure, and Kurigakure, as well as half a dozen small villages. She began. Thing is, that should have been impossible. Hearing this, Naruto adopted a confused expression. Uzu by definition was an impenetrable fortress. Whirlpools enhanced by chakra that naturally flowed from the village created a natural defense surrounding the island. Only an Uzumaki would know how to navigate through the whirlpools to reach the island, and that secret was only shared with their most trusted ally and village they helped found, Konoha. That doesn't make sense. Naruto frowned. GG would never betray an ally like that. Nah, I don't think the old monkey has it in him to betray anyone. Yuri dismissed the possibility of the old bastard doing such a thing. If anything, the old monkey's forgiving nature had been the source of at least two of Konoha's major problems, and a few minor ones. But, there are those within the village that would go behind the monkey's back to do such things. Rancid sacks of shit. The whiskered teen cursed, knowing exactly who his fiancée was referring to. The three old bags of bones that sat on the elder council, two of which were cemented in the old ways, having a firm belief that only those naturally born within the village deserved recognition. While the last elder, the old war hawk himself, held a firm belief that only he knew how Konoha should be led, and bring every other village and nation under his heel. It was no secret that the old cripple desired to bring the village's Jinchuriki under his control under the guise of training him for the good of Konoha. No doubt to ensure Naruto would be loyal to him first and Konoha second. There was also little doubt in the whiskered teen's mind that the bastard would no doubt use him to kill the old man and take the mantle for himself. Anyways, we'll talk more about this in private. The black-haired woman stated as she kicked herself off the ground, landing in a battle stance, her left eye glowing wildly. Let's continue. Right. Naruto grinned as he felt his right eye roar to life, emitting a dense red chakra that began to form around him. Meanwhile, Yuri's own purple chakra formed around herself. However, before the two could renew their spar, a swirl of leaves caught their attention as Anko appeared in between the two. Holy shit! The snake mistress exclaimed, seeing the condition the training ground was in. I thought you said you two were only going to be doing some light sparring, it looks like all of the shinobi wars happened here. Hey, bitch! Yuri grinned as she saw her, as she unashamedly dubbed, Harem sister, prompting the Dango lover to look in her direction. Trust me, this is a light spar. Anyways, what brings you here? What? Anko let a seductive grin spread across her face, slowly making her way towards Naruto. Each step she took her hips swayed side to side in a seductive manner. Reaching her victim, she slithered behind him, wrapping an arm possessively over his shoulder and across his chest while she leaned in and gave a sensual lick along his neck, causing him to shiver slightly. I can't come and check on Whiskers. Unfortunately for the whiskered teen in question, the current teasing from the seductive snake mistress was giving him vivid flashbacks of a week ago when he woke up with his head sandwiched between two pairs of heavenly valleys. It hadn't helped when he noticed that both of them were completely, their bodies pressed firmly against him, and to make matters worse, he had growing problem down below. In his current position, it was taking all of his willpower to fight off the erection that was threatening to rise up. Meanwhile, the look on Yuri's face, while amused of the predicament her fiancé was in, clearly showed the Anko that she didn't believe a word she said. Prompting said snake mistress to sigh and release her blonde lover. Alright, you got me. Anko held up her hands in mock surrender. While I would love to tease Naruto-kun more, the old man asked me to retrieve Naruto-kun for something involving the attack on him a week ago. Yuri sneered while Naruto frowned at the memory. Suppose we should go see what the old man wants. Naruto sighed, relaxing from his fighting stance. A little disappointed as he was immensely enjoying his spar with his fiancée. Sure, she was a sadistic bitch when it came to training, having lost count of how many times she had beaten him half to death, but he thrived under that kind of training, and the results of their latest spar spoke for themselves. You coming, Yuri-chan? Nah, you have fun with the old monkey. Yuri gave a dismissive wave. There is something I need to look into. Naruto gave a knowing look before nodding his head, considering the topic they were discussing just moments ago. He had a good idea of what she wanted to look into. Grabbing his jacket off the branch, he quickly put it on before turning his attention back towards his purple-eyed mistress. Moving in, he gave her a quick peck on the lips before leaving the ruined training ground with the snake mistress, leaving the notorious Widowmaker blushing up a storm. One thing he had learned over the week about his fiancée was that despite her aggressive and don't give a FCK attitude, she was unnaturally shy and embarrassed when it came to the more tender aspects of being in a relationship. "Oh, I am going to get you for that one, Naruto Koi," Yuri commented to herself as she watched the two depart, licking her lips in anticipation. With Naruto and Anko, the two pariahs made their way out of the forest of death and into the center of the village, ignoring the various glares and dirty looks they received from random civilians that did not approve of their relationship as they walked down the main road towards the Hokage's tower. "You know she is going to get you for that little stunt back there," Anko warned, a grin spreading across her face. "Worth it though," Naruto quipped, with a foxy grin. "Who would have thought bad bitch Widowmaker would get so flustered with a little kiss? Only because it's you," the snake mistress reminded the whiskered teen. "Anyone else tried that shit, she would rip their balls out of their asses and feed it to them." Naruto and a few of the males within earshot couldn't help but clench their cheeks at the snake mistress's rather graphic description of what the sadistic woman would do to anyone who made any unwanted advances towards her. "Anyways, since I've been mostly with Yuri-chan all week, how about I take you out to eat after we're finished with the old man?" Naruto invited, knowing he hadn't been able to spend as much alone time with the snake mistress as he would have liked to. "Are you asking me on a date, Naruto-kun?" Anko grinned. "That depends on if you say yes." He matched her grin. "Do you even have to ask?" she challenged as she wrapped her arm around his shoulders, bringing him closer to her while he wrapped his own arm around her waist, giving the two pariahs a sense of contentment in one another's company. "Hey Anko-chan," a voice called out from behind the two, prompting them to turn around to see the form of one Iruka Yumino running towards them, causing both to scowl at the man for ruining their moment. "What do you want, Yumino-san?" Anko inquired in a clipped tone, making it clear that she was annoyed by the mont's arrival. "Come now Anko-chan, you can call me Iruka-kun." The scarred Chunin smiled. "And I just wanted to invite you out for." "Not interested, Yumino-san." The snake mistress rejected the mont's invitation before he could even finish. "Now, if you'll excuse us, my boyfriend and I have been summoned by Lord Hokage." At the word, boyfriend, the scarred Chunin finally noticed the blonde male next to the snake mistress. Taking note of how their hands were entangled with one another, causing the man to scowl slightly, clearly despising the fact that the woman he desired had become involved with another before he could stake his claim. "Sorry, I didn't see you there Iruka attempted to save face, shaking off his disdain for the blonde young man before him. "I am hurt you don't remember me, Iruka-sensei," Naruto stated in a fake hurt tone while putting some venom on the mont's supposed title. Iruka's eyes widened for a fraction of a second as he took a closer look at the young man. The unruly golden blonde hair, his cerulean blue eyes, and 3 distinctive whisker marks on each cheek, whisker marks. Naruto," the man stammered, surprised at the change in his former student. Having not seen him since his team arrived at the tower at the end of the second phase of the exams. He had secretly hoped the brat would have gotten himself killed in the forest, seeing as the damned Uzumaki was the primary obstacle in his way for the snake mistress. Now it had appeared that something had happened between the two, bringing them even closer than they were before. Iruka couldn't help but curse his rotten luck, and the damn brat. He had something special planned for Anko this evening. Having intended to lure the woman out for a few drinks, and with a little something added to the mix, he was all but assured she would be his by morning when the deed had already been done and she would have no choice but to stay with him. However, once again the damned brat had gotten in the way. Took you long enough to recognize me. The blonde scoffed. Anyways, as my lovely girlfriend has stated, we were summoned by the Lord Hokage, so unless you have something important to say, we must be off. Not to sound rude, Iruka ventured, looking between the two with a hint of jealousy. Isn't she a little too old for you, Naruto? I mean, didn't you had a crush on your teammate, Sakura, wasn't it? Anko scowled at the jab about the age difference between the two of them. Hell, she was only 6 years older than him, it wasn't that big of a gap. She was tempted to physically lash out at the scarred Chunin, if not for Naruto holding her hand firmly, giving it a comforting squeeze. First off, I am not that shallow. Naruto began, narrowing his eyes at his former teacher, causing him to shrink under the blonde's gaze. I care little about how old someone is, providing they are legally viewed as an adult. What I care about is their integrity and who they are as a person. Secondly, why would I want a girl when I can have a woman? The blonde continued, moving his arm around Anko's waist to emphasize his point. Now, if you'll excuse us, the old man is waiting. Anko couldn't help but laugh out loud at the shocked expression that now adorned Iruka's face as she fell in step alongside Naruto, letting out a slight yelp in surprise when she felt his hand slip from her waist and gave her rear a firm squeeze. A sadistic grin spreading across her face as she quickly realizes why he did that. Leaving behind a stunned and infuriated Iruka behind as they made their way towards the Hokage's tower. Hokage's office. In the 37 years that he had sat in this office, never did Hiruzen imagine he would be signing off on this. The solution Ibiki had suggested certainly was unorthodox, but well within the confines of the law, albeit a law that had been established during the Warring States era that had all but been forgotten. Is there any particular reason you suggested this? Hiruzen inquired, looking to the head of the torture and interrogation department. She's broken. Ibiki sighed, allowing his shoulders to sag slightly. Mizuki had done a damn good job making her see him as the perfect shinobi before his betrayal. Add in her mysterious informant that manipulated her vulnerability. No doubt she is weighed down by guilt after what she had done to Naruto-kun. The elder man sighed, rubbing his temples. From the reports he read, it was clear the young woman wasn't one of the fools that saw the Jinchuriki as the fox. No, her entire motive for her attack on the teenage boy had entirely revolved around avenging her fiancé. If anyone can fix her, it'll be him. Ibiki grunted with a soft smile. He has a way of cracking open even the most hardened of hearts. Hiruzen could only chuckle in agreement. The report he had received from Tazuna and Tsunami had highlighted that particular talent of the whiskered teen. The super bridge builder had given a complete recounting of how the blonde genin had been able to get the demon of the mist, Zabuza Momochi, to openly shed tears for his adopted son whom had sacrificed himself so that Zabuza might live. As well as Tsunami praising Naruto for inspiring not only her son, but the village as a whole to rise up against Gato. Not to mention Ibiki's own experience in witnessing it in action when the whiskered teen motivated the remaining teams to continue with the exams, resulting in even more passing the first phase than he had anticipated. The two were broken out of their conversation by a solid knock at the door. Enter. Hiruzen called out. Upon given permission, the door opened allowing both Naruto and Anko entry into the office. You called, GG. Naruto inquired. At ease Naruto-kun, Anko-chan. The old man replied, gesturing for the two that had just entered to relax. Which they did, as Anko took it as her cue to hang over the whiskered blonde, her firmly pressing against his back, causing him to blush slightly as the mesh fabric she used, while hiding her goods, ensured he felt everything. It didn't help that seductive snake mistress further teased the poor teenage boy by giving a sensual lick from the base of his neck, all the way to his ear before giving his earlobe a playful bite. Anko, could you not molest your boyfriend in the middle of the Hokage's office? Ibiki chastised with an exasperated sigh at the woman's antics. Ever since the two pariahs had become an official couple, the Tokubetsu Jonin openly staked her claim whenever she could. Either to tease the poor teen, or to make a statement towards any unwanted advances. Fortunately, for the flustered blonde, a knock at the door brought the woman's teasing to an abrupt end. As the door opened, Naruto's eyes locked onto the black-haired woman who had attacked him was led into the room, her hands and fingers restrained, preventing her from performing any hand seals. Hidden out of sight, under her shirt was a chakra suppressant seal with a kill switch, placed firmly on her chest. Ensuring that if she were to attempt anything, she would be killed immediately. However, he noticed that as soon as she saw him, she immediately averted her eyes, refusing to make eye contact with the whiskered teen. Now that everyone is here, Hiruzen began, bringing everyone's attention to himself before he turned his attention to the restrained Kunoichi. Tsubaki Koto, by your own admission, you have been found guilty of attacking a fellow Konoha shinobi, as well as a clan heir and of noble birth. As Hiruzen spoke, Naruto took the time to observe the woman who had attacked him. Noticing in her body language that this wasn't the fierce Kunoichi that he had encountered a week ago, but rather a shell of her former self. Almost like she was empty inside, broken even. Such crimes would normally see you executed immediately. The elder man stated with finality, prompting the woman to nod her head in acceptance. Not even offering a defense for her actions. However, Ibiki-san has offered an alternative. Hearing this prompted both Naruto and Tsubaki to look at the old man. An expression of confusion adorning both of their faces. Under Konoha Law Chapter 2, Article 4b, I am sentencing Tsubaki Koto to servitude under 1 Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Hiruzen quoted the Warring States-era law, earning shocked looks from those within the room, minus Ibiki and Hiruzen himself. Wait! Naruto exclaimed, looking to the elder man. What do you mean, servitude under me? In short, Naruto-kun, from this day forward Tsubaki will be a servant to your clan. Hiruzen explained. Trust me when I say, this is the best solution. For both of you. How can forcing this bitch to be his slave be the best solution for either of them? Anko challenged angrily. After what the bitch had done to Naruto, she deserved to rot in a cell for the rest of her life for all the snake mistress cared. Why not just lock her up with the rest of the sacks of shit? Because Anko. Ibiki began, turning his attention to the snake mistress. For one, the prison doesn't separate the prisoners, and with the male population of the facility grossly outnumbering the female population, I don't think I need to spell out what would happen. But the guards. Anko attempted to rebuttal. The guards are there to keep the prisoners inside the facility, not keep them safe. The large man pointed out. Besides, while it doesn't excuse her actions, Tsubaki was being manipulated by false information given by an unknown source. As well as evidence of a more personal betrayal. Naruto frowned at this, getting a sense of what the personal betrayal entailed. Placing a calming hand on the snake mistress's shoulder, the whiskered teen turned his attention towards the woman in question. And how do you feel about this, Koto-san? Turning her attention towards the blonde teenager, still refusing to meet his eyes, bowed her head submissively while folding her hands in front of her the best she could with her restraints. I have committed a grievous crime against you, and must atone for my actions. She replied in a solemn tone. I am in your care, Uzumaki-sama. Alright, none of that sama crap. Just Naruto, please. Naruto stated, not being fond of such titles he didn't feel he deserved. If you insist on using a suffix, just use san. As you wish, Uzumaki-san. Tsubaki replied in the same solemn tone as before. Very well. Hiruzen spoke up, bringing out a piece of sealing paper with an intricate seal already drawn on it, no bigger than the size of a coin. Naruto-kun, I will need some of your blood to make this official and for all intent and purpose, Tsubaki-san's master. With a reluctant nod, the blonde teen stepped towards the old mon's desk and held out his hand, allowing the elder man to draw blood from his finger and drip it onto the seal. Watching as it lit up for a moment before change color from the dull black it was to a reddish-orange color. Getting up from his desk, Hiruzen moved around to where Tsubaki stood, instructing her to turn her back towards him. Now Naruto-kun, you are going to place this seal on the back of her neck and channel your chakra into it. He instructed. This will seal the contract between the two of you that will bind you to one another. Naruto followed as he was instructed, placing the seal upon the back of her neck and channeling a bit of his chakra into it. Tsubaki hissed in discomfort as the seal was imprinted upon her skin, connecting to her own chakra coils. Once it was done, Naruto removed his hand, whilst Hiruzen removed the chakra suppression seal from her chest, which fortunately didn't require bare skin contact, and released her from her restraints. Now Naruto-kun. Hiruzen looked to the blonde teen. I feel I must notify you that now that the slave seal is on her, Tsubaki-san will be compelled to follow your orders should you issue them like an order, regardless of what it is, minus inflicting self-harm on herself. Naruto couldn't help but frown at this, but nodded his head nonetheless. Any phrases I should avoid then? Just avoid making it sound like a command and you should be fine. Hiruzen offered, knowing the young man before him despised slavery. No doubt the only reason the young blonde even agreed to this was to keep the young woman from enduring a far worse fate. Now, if there are no more questions, you are dismissed. I look forward to seeing the fruits of your training in the finals, Naruto-kun. Silently, the blonde nodded, giving the elder man a fox-like grin before he departed the room with Anko and Tsubaki in tow, closing the door behind them. Sitting down in his chair, Hiruzen let out a long sigh before turning his attention towards Ibiki. I believe you are correct. He stated. This was the right thing to do. Despite her technically being his slave, I know he will not treat her as such, and as you said, he has a way of cracking even the hardest of hearts. Think we should have warned Tsubaki-san that the kid is engaged to Yuri? Ibiki questioned with a raised eyebrow, causing Hiruzen to pale at the realization. Shit. Hiruzen cursed under his breath. Jiraiya grumbled in annoyance to himself as he strolled down the main street of the village, ignoring the various shops that lined both sides of the massive street. The white-haired man despised returning to the village every time to make his monthly reports, mainly because due to that thrice-damned bitch, he couldn't do any research for his beloved book series while he was in the village thanks to those damned seals around the hot springs. He had hoped that after the Kyuubi attack, the seals would have been destroyed and he would be free to peek upon the local beauties once more, but the damned seals remained intact. If anything, it was like the residual chakra left behind by the attack had empowered them and made them even stronger than before to the point that his mere presence near the hot springs would alert the Anbu to his location, regardless of which side he was on. Hope that bitch is rotting in hell where she belongs. The toad sage thought darkly to himself. At least her bastard child will be useful to me. Despite claiming to be the kid's godfather, the man held no real love for the brat in any sense of the word. It was only because of the vague prophecy spoken by the toad elder that he was even interested in the brat. Something along the lines of, a child born of two legends, guided by a mighty warrior shall reshape the shinobi world. Or something like that. Jiraiya never paid much attention to the actual words, only what it meant. At least to him. Though it was clear to the perverted hermit that the child in question was none other than his prized student's brat, as the Yondaime had become quite infamous throughout the entirety of the elemental nations. He could also grudgingly admit that the crimson-haired bitch had a reputation of her own that had given her a legendary status throughout the lands as well. So, that covered the child of prophecy's lineage, and it was clear that he was to be the mighty warrior that would guide the boy. Just need to train the brat up just enough to barely make it to the end, and then being the noble and virtuous man that I am, I will finish what my apprentice started and avenge his death.